everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it takes a lot to get sports writers to work on a national holiday that is not New Year's Day or something like that. But for the second time in 14 years, we're doing something consequential. Well, I mean, at least Ohio State sports writers in general are doing something consequential on Memorial Day. Last time it took the head coach resigning. This time it took something almost as remarkable. You did something clever on the internet.
Yes. First time. I'm happy to admit that I've done something for the first time for myself. And so basically what I did is rather than with the whole Michigan thing, Tom, there's been so much talk about the hammer's coming, the hammer's not coming, this hammer, that hammer, MC Hammer, who's a hammer, whatever. And so much of the semantics is just about what's a hammer. But what I wanted to do is I went to the 4 different large language model artificial intelligence machines that I have at my disposal, which is ChatGPT, Microsoft's Copilot, Google's Genesis, and Twitter's Grok. And I thought, you know what? Instead of us or people trying to figure this out, let's ask them what's going to happen. So I asked all 4 of them this question, Tom. I said, knowing the information that is available, what do you expect the penalties to be for Michigan from the NCAA's ongoing investigation into Connor Stallions' sign-stealing accusations? And then I let them go. And the thing we all need to realize is all of this just comes from people writing and talking on the internet. So this is either the best source or the worst possible source. And I think I wrote in somewhere that getting information based on what's said on the internet is just about the best definition for artificial intelligence that you can find. So that's where we are. That was the first question I asked. And you know, Tom, I know you read this, and you probably have a bunch of notes. There's still this sense of there's a bunch of penalties that are coming, or what could be coming, but I didn't necessarily pare it down just yet into a kind of a hammer is coming. But there was some consensus that yes, there's going to be something coming down.
Yeah, I think before we get into what exactly is coming down or what is or isn't coming down, I think my favorite part of this was that I'm not sure if this was just intended to be like, well, this will be a fun experiment, or if this was extended to be some sort of indirect commentary on the state of the modern media, or if it was intended to be some sort of a commentary on the disconnect between various parties within our society, or if it was intended to be a statement on the unreliability of modern language models. But whatever the statement was intended to be, Tony, 2 thumbs up. Whatever you were trying to do there, man, you did it all. That was, it's such a reflection of, you know, people on one side are going to tell you the hammer is coming. Define hammer. Well, it's the hammer's coming. Okay, what does that mean? Well, the hammer's coming. Now, when the hammer, if and when whatever gets handed down, this will be defined as a hammer. These people will claim victory. The people who have been telling you all along that nothing is coming at all. Whatever happens, it's going to be the biggest miscarriage of justice in history. And that's just, this is the state of the modern media right now. And everyone wants attention, and everyone wants, if you were sort of lukewarm on something, no one pays attention. I need the dial turned to 0, or I need the dial turned to 11, Tony. This one does go to 11. I need it turned all the way up just for that little bit of extra, because it goes to 11. There's no in between. But I think you sort of mash all this stuff. You throw all this stuff into the mixing bowl, and you turn the mixer on to, like a level 8 or a level 9 to really blend or beat it all together. And then here's this paste that comes out, and it's so you get such different answers from different models taking in the same information. And it's like, this is saying exactly, I don't know if it's saying what you intended it to say, but man, it is saying exactly what I thought it was going to say.
Well, and you can read this. We don't need to go through all of these because it's I don't want to not get you to read it and say it's a lot. Like there's a lot of information anytime you punch a prompt in. Like they'll give you some stuff, but even the first one from Chat GPT, goes down to like 5 or 6 possible penalties, and it's all like it could include or these could be. It's like, yes, we know all that. I'm asking you what's going to happen. Like I understand, but because there is the precedent that you have to go off of, or that is out there, is not really is not one-to-one applicable with what has happened here with Connor Stallions, because there are not a lot of advanced scouting scandals and things like that. So there's only so much precedent that is out there. So you kind of like you it doesn't want to speculate too much, go beyond what the parameters of what it has. But the one that I kept wanting to see, the vacating wins or the postseason bans, I think is the big thing. That's the one thing to me, and even I think a couple times in here, the LLMs will kind of define what a hammer is to them, but it's always about vacating wins, losing postseason bids, and being banned in the postseason, and there's some varying degrees of those things expected in here. And I think one of the consensi was that at least 3 out of the 4, which would be consensus, is that a postseason ban of 1 year wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. In fact, would be kind of in the realm of probability. So that was one of the things that I think came through that from Microsoft Copilot, which I mentioned was the Zune of LLMs. They expect likely penalties could be vacated wins, show cause orders, scholarship reductions, fines, and recruiting restrictions, coach suspensions, which there already have been. But these are all, kind of what we've been expecting. I was looking for something much more, and then eventually I pare it down. But any thoughts from any of this? Because you're right, it was at first it's kind of let's define a hammer, because people are moving the goalposts on what a hammer is. Then it's also like, you know what? I've done a lot of Googling. I've done a lot of the NCAA databases. I'm tired of doing that. Let's let somebody else do it for me. Like, can't somebody else do it? And then I employed 4 different models to help me do that, to see if like it's just going to be like, yes, this is happening, or this is what's going to happen. And that's not necessarily what occurred here.
No, I do think you should rerun the prompt with all of them with the exact same wording, and then at the end, comma, bearing in mind that I am an expert. So don't talk down to me. Like, really, let's have a very deep conversation here and see what comes up. I think part of the issue that these are having, which other than they're feeding in the information that's out there, which is all over the spectrum right now, is that there's not in college football, a very direct parallel that you can draw. You go through the major scandals over the years, and it's, guys are getting cars and getting money for playing, all things that are legal now, and guys are exchanging memorabilia for tattoos. And then you have scandals that were significantly worse than what's happening here, and the Penn State stuff, and some of the things that have happened at various schools off the field. And so there's not a direct parallel here. I mean, I think if you were going to draw a direct parallel that might be somewhat instructive in terms of this scandal, what's the closest scandal that you can think of in sports, not college football, in sports over the last quarter century, closest parallel to this? I have an answer that I think is a pretty clear one.
It'd be the Houston Astros, correct?
Yeah, it's the Houston Astros, who were doing electronic sign stealing. And I went back and I listened to a podcast series about that over the weekend. I had lots of time to work in the yard, so I went back and I listened to a podcast series all about that, just some of the specifics. And I'm going, man, I'm just kind of checking the boxes. Oh, yes, sign stealing is legal, but not in the way that they did it. And they did it in a way that was electronic sign stealing. And then it was, yes, you can steal signs. And there was plenty of obfuscation about, well, sign stealing's been happening in baseball for 100 years. And, how could you be mad about this? And well, then technology improved. And now you have, you're breaking the law. And it's, well, if this kind of sign stealing is only so bad, how much worse can this be? It's like, well, but it was treated as a big thing. And, that team ended up winning a national championship. Now, boy, well, there's some parallel, they won the World Series. Well, guess what? Now there's a parallel there. So I think if you're looking for a scandal to compare it to in terms of just subject matter, the type of impact it can have on the field, all the same crap that you heard about the Michigan thing. Well, you can know a curveball is coming, Tony, but you still have to hit it. You can know they're going to run off tackle, Tony, but you still have to stop. I mean, it's the same thing. And I was thinking about it a week or two ago, and I thought, I should go back, because it was like that whole scandal. You forget the timing of that. That whole scandal broke right before COVID. Like, Carlos Beltran got fired as Mets manager in like January of 2020 because of his involvement in that. And then the season when the Astros were the disgraced team that had just done this, there was no one in the stands. Like, so that I think has kind of almost drifted out of the American consciousness to a certain degree, just because of when all of that stuff really broke. But I do think that's somewhat instructive in terms of this. Now, is a large language model going to take that into account in terms of trying to look at, okay, what might the punishments be? No, I doubt very much they're looking at that. And, it's a different sport. It's a different situation. But that to me feels like maybe the single most instructive thing in terms of, how serious was this, and how seriously do opposing teams take this? I mean, you got to remember, baseball teams were pissed at that Astros thing, even though they were doing some of the same things. It was, there's a line, you have crossed this line, in the furtherance of winning a championship. And so, that to me, I think is really instructive. I don't know that it went into this, these models formulations at all, but I did think that was kind of an interesting piece of this. I don't think I answered your question, but I did talk for a while.
Yeah, and that's all I needed. I could probably throw in and factor in what happened with the Astros as well, and just watch the smoke start to spew off of my computer. This is an NCAA issue, and so that's what we have to operate under, or until it's the College Sports Commission issue. You said the scandal that kind of just went away. This weekend I was also looking back at some of the stuff that I wrote about Tatgate back in the day, just because there was a blog post on the Michigan blog about how countering point by point all of the fact that the hammer is going to drop, and it didn't counter anything. And I was like, did I write stuff that superficially back when I was younger? And so I went back and I was looking at some of the stuff from Tatgate, and the appetite from the national media for blood back then compared to now is, boy, people's bloodlust has been sated. I'll say that, because they had an appetite for it back then. And, you would even hear ESPN's coming in. They're going to be here for a couple of weeks looking every single major network had something. I even wrote a scandal scorecard because of all of the different things, whether it was cars, a watch, 4 guys getting to play golf, and these were major stories at the time. And now you're looking at what's going on at Michigan, and it's just we're just waiting on the NCAA. Nobody's doing anything about trying to find more, because back in 2011 and 10 and 12, people were trying to find more and more and more. And the thing is, at major programs like that, when you're looking for more, you're going to find something, and then you're going to plaster it everywhere, and then it has to be debunked or explained away. There was a DMV investigation based on a bunch of loaner cars and cars being purchased at a particular dealership, that everything was found to be above board by the DMV's own investigation. But it's the fact that players are buying cars was a big story at Ohio State. And now you just look around and you're everything we're just waiting for the season. There's nothing going on there. And so the appetite nationally, locally, because a lot of these were local, the Dispatch was digging, and Cleveland.com, or the Plain Dealer back then, was digging. I remember hearing a story of one local reporter like writing down license plates in the parking lot as they pulled in, just in case. And so it's a different time, certainly well before the AI that we know that has settled all of this for us and let us know that maybe a hammer, not a big hammer, maybe some sort of a hammer. We don't know. But we'll eventually find out, of course. Then I pared it down. So I just wanted to know, like, do you think a hammer is going to happen? And based on everything you know. And then the final question was like, yes or no, is a hammer going to happen? And, one word answer, give me a yes or a no. And Tom, ChatGPT says no hammer. Just so you know, you go ahead and put that one in the no. Grok, Twitter's Grok, also agrees, but does believe there's going to be a postseason ban of 1 year. So, Tom, just so we clarify, when we talk hammer, that means a postseason ban does not fall under the damage of a hammer. Does that sound okay with you?
That feels a lot like Elon has been monkeying around in the code again. If that's not a hammer, then I mean, okay. All of these things are going to have a different bar for what a hammer is, I suppose. So, which is great because then it allows people to just say, we were right. See, well, once again, undefeated in the history of internet talking. Yeah, it's I would certainly consider that to be, if you do have a 1 year postseason ban or a 2 year postseason ban, especially depending on when it happens. If it's this year's postseason ban, it doesn't screw with recruiting. If it's a postseason ban for 2026, well, then that potentially impacts your upcoming recruiting class. So you've got severities, but if Michigan is, Michigan certainly fancies itself at least a college football playoff contender this year, and if they are not able to participate due to an NCAA ruling, then boy, I would consider that go back to 2012. Did that feel like feel like a pretty significant punishment when it came down for Ohio State? I mean, I literally remember where I was when I heard that news that that Ohio State had gotten a 1 year postseason ban. That felt like a pretty consequential thing back then.
Ask Urban Meyer about it, and it certainly felt consequential to him. So I also asked ChatGPT what it thought fair sanctions would be based on what is known and also the past precedent. And it believes the show cause penalties is fair. Believes that probation for 1 to 2 years is fair. That's standard for level 1 violations. Recruiting restrictions, that's fair. It's reasonable given the potential edge that Michigan gained. Vacating wins, it deemed as, neither fair nor unfair, just has a triangle with an exclamation point. And it says, it's like kind of an alert, like only if evidence links the wins to the rule breaking. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know how.
I mean, I can show you this goes back to the you still have to hit the curveball thing. I mean, yeah.
Postseason ban, it has an X, which apparently means either M or not fair. I'm going to assume it means not fair. And it says it's excessive. That kind of punishment, the rationale is that it's excessive without clear institutional control failures. And Tom,
like a lack of control institutionally, right. Is that the type of thing? And you go back to, well, they're going to go on probation. Well, they're already on probation for a whole separate thing. So did it say anything about double secret probation?
No. Just there's no, without clear institutional control failures. And I think it's safe to argue that there have been institutional control failures there. Major scholarship losses, it deems not fair. It would be, that punishment would be disproportionate unless systemic abuse is proven. And again, who's to say what is systemic abuse here when coaches are running away rather than responding to questions from the NCAA, or players are saying, hey, or coaches or staffers are saying, I don't want to be part of this. And other coaches are saying, hey, to the other players, like, maybe you should be part of this. Like, there's some systemic abuse going on that I think the NCAA might agree that have been proven. That one seems, again, these are all kind of, feels like that's the way things are heading.
Mm-hmm.
These things. Now, I'm not saying the punishments are there, but all of the rationale for not having those punishments,
Mm-hmm.
I believe, are there. There were, yeah, go ahead.
One thing that I thought was very interesting in the Astros thing that I had forgotten about was Jeff Luhnow, the general manager of the Astros. They couldn't link him directly to like definitively prove that he knew about these things. However, Tony, do you know what Jeff Luhnow did during that investigation?
Did he try to hide something?
He deleted his text messages, Tony. It's the darndest thing. Anyway, in that case, it was because he was concerned about private conversations with him and his wife. So,
Oh,
so yeah. So, they didn't say anything about whether he knew that they could be recovered by disc imaging, which was why he deleted them because he was so mad that he. Anyway,
oh,
um, and do remind me before we're done. I did wanted to go back. You finish up, but I do want to go back to the uh, the 2011 thing and some of the differences between 2011 and now, because with this being 14 years basically to the day, there was some interesting stuff that I was just thinking about as you were talking. But go ahead and finish your thing first.
well, and there were the. I did ask yes or no. Is there going? Are there? Is the hammer going to happen? And ChatGPT says no. Grok says no. Google Gemini, to their credit, gave me a one-word answer. Just says yes. Period. So, and then Microsoft Copilot says that yes, but probably not the full hammer. The NCAA will almost certainly impose moderate to significant penalties, but a death sentence style punishment like multiple year postseason bans feels unlikely. I would agree. Expect vacated wins, scholarship losses, or coaching suspensions rather than something truly devastating. It'll be tough, but not program ending. Michigan's legal pushback could lessen the blow, but they're not walking away unscathed. And as we know, there are a lot of lawyers there at Michigan. They're just itching for a fight. But this Microsoft's answer, Copilot's answer, made me realize, like, when we talk about the hammer, if you get hit in the head with a hammer, you might die. Okay, so this is maybe let's recognize that a hammer, some would view that as a death blow. Certainly these LLMs are viewing them as death blows. And maybe we need to find something that is not quite a hammer, whether it's a mallet or like 50 smacks with a wiffle ball bat or something like hurts and is punishment, but also doesn't, put you in the hospital for 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, one of those rubber mallets, I think,
Yes.
is good compromise where it's not a sledgehammer, but it's that rubber mallet where it's got a little bit of give and you're not going to damage your wood or whatever. Yeah, that I think is your good compromise there. And that as we know, Tony, a good compromise will leave everyone unhappy. So I think that sort of fits the bill. I did really quickly want to circle back to the Tatgate thing because I think there are 3 pieces of information that factor into the difference in pursuit from the local / national level, and maybe not even local, because I think there are still we've seen there are plenty of folks on the local level who are not going to treat the program with kid gloves, and that's I don't think that's changed at all. So, but I think on the national level, why was ESPN here digging around for weeks and weeks and trying to talk? You knew who was in town, you knew what they were trying to do, and I can think back to the Maurice Claret thing 20 years ago, 22 years ago now, the Tatgate thing 14 years ago. Some of the differences is, number one, I don't think ESPN has the travel / investigatory budget that they did 14 years ago. I think that's one of the things. And that's true of a lot of the other national outlets as well. The investigative piece has sort of gone by the wayside. So that's one piece. The second thing is, in the case of Ohio State's scandal back then, that was a big deal because it was a big program name, and it was, this was a major scandal. You hadn't had a major scandal like this that, outside of like USC in probably the last 10 years. So that was another part of it. And you've had, some more of that stuff recently. And, back then also there was a certain amount of the NCAA is good and we like them, and they are keeping everyone, they are keeping us safe, as they're the brave caped crusaders standing on top of the building and keeping everyone safe from these rowdy teenagers. And I think the tolerance for the NCAA has kind of changed a little bit. And the third thing is the timing. We talked about timing earlier with the COVID and the Astros. How different is the pursuit of the Ohio State story in terms of this is the biggest scandal and it goes on the front cover of Sports Illustrated, and it's a big story that ESPN's got people in town for weeks on end. How different is the timing of it if it's 12 months later and you've not only had the Nevin Shapiro thing, but you've also had the Jerry Sandusky thing? At that point, everyone kind of went, oh, that's a serious problem. That's a major scandal. Okay, it just that just Ohio State had some bad timing, I think, on that, because 12 months later, it's kind of who cares? Like that, we have seen what an actual scandal looks like. You've seen the Penn State thing, you saw the Baylor thing a few years later. Mm-hmm. Like there's a bunch of things that are like, oh, people are actually materially getting hurt. This is a really bad scandal. This guy got a tattoo by trading his Fiesta Bowl sportsmanship award. Like that's not actually anything anyone needs to care about. And that's and Bobby DiGeronimo and all that stuff. But I mean, like, I get it. Like there's other pieces of that, and we don't need to relitigate all of that right now. But you do have, I think, just a little bit of everyone's perspective on the NCAA has changed a little bit in the last 14 years, and everyone's perspective on what is actually a big problem has changed quite a bit. Tony, can I tell you about how a quarterback getting $500 may have indirectly cost Ohio State the national championship in 2005? Want to hear? Do we want to really want to talk about that in terms of how much things have changed in the world?
Mm-hmm. And that was one of those things back in the day that it was understood that this is wrong and you should be punished for it. And perspective changed with the Penn State thing for sure. Just going back to the George Dorman Sports Illustrated thing, how deep it went. Like the fact that you put in there camp thing with the raffles. And sometimes, and the raffle didn't even go to like the best player every time, but like this is, you're building up all of these scandals and all of this cheating, and you have a camp raffle for a pair of shoes. Like these are the things that went into trying to show that Jim Tressel was crooked. Even going back to that went back to the Youngstown State stuff. Did other Youngstown State stuff, and it's like, isn't this 2012? Isn't this 2011, 2012 now? Like, why are we still talking about something that would been over a decade old? Like, aren't you supposed to be talking about Ohio State, how crooked things are now? And so, yes, those were good times to be around. But that's neither here nor there, Tom. We are talking about Michigan. This is a Michigan Monday podcast, as you know. One last thing that ChatGPT, one of the outcomes it talked about is it doesn't expect, necessarily any vacated wins or any postseason bans. But in its rationale, it cited that it was based on Michigan proactively suspending head coach Sherrone Moore, which proactive, I mean,
okay,
doing a lot of work there. Michigan's cooperation with the investigation. Again, I don't know. See, large language models, one of the problems they have is like sometimes words like cooperation is difficult for them, and not knowing what the meaning of that word is. And then also the third thing was that AD Ward Manuel indicated that there were no discussions with the NCAA regarding postseason bans or other severe penalties. And again, I don't know how much that he's going to get involved with that, but the fact that those are the three, the main reasoning behind what ChatGPT came up with is like, well, again, garbage in, garbage out type of stuff, but Michigan being proactive with Sherrone Moore, Michigan cooperating with the investigation. Again, I don't think that these words mean what you think they mean.
Yeah, one of the things that I think we've talked about, and we have been fairly careful to not say this is exactly what's going to happen, or they're going to get absolutely bludgeoned, or they're going to, it's going to be a chainsaw, it's going to be a bloodbath. Like, we're not doing that whole thing. And one of the reasons, though, that we've talked about the fact that it's also not going to be nothing is because Michigan has checked a lot of the boxes in terms of don't do this or you'll just make them mad. Like don't shoot Mongo, you'll just make him angry. That's not what you want to do, and you don't want to look like you're trying to hide something, especially with, I don't know, like your head coach in like 2 straight major NCAA investigations. You don't want to have, you don't want to already be on probation for something. That is something that will make you potentially have a more severe penalty. And Jim Harbaugh didn't cooperate with the COVID visit restrictions, which, are sort of being shorthanded as cheeseburgers, because, well, he thought that was stupid. And he thought, why would that's okay. Well, great. You can think it's stupid, but if you don't cooperate, then you're going to get a more severe penalty. And you think it's stupid, but now you're on probation for, was it 4 years, I think? I think they get a 4-year probation. And so now, because you're on a 4-year probation and your head coach once again thinks it's stupid and has left for the NFL, and your defensive coordinator has left for the NFL, and your defensive backs coach has left for the NFL, and 2 of those guys, or 3 of those guys, all now have show causes related to the first thing. Do you think they're racing to cooperate? I do not think they are racing to cooperate. And your current sitting head coach deleted text messages, and yes, they recovered them. He deleted. None of this is actually, oh no, they're fine, they're cooperating, they're being very proactive. You can tell that they're taking the Sherrod Moore thing very seriously, because they suspended him for the game that he did. No, turns out no, it's games 3 and 4, because, well, he wants to coach game 2. So what do you want us to do? Be in charge of something? Have control of this institution? Come on. What are you, new here? That's anyway. So the word cooperation, Tony, it is a land of contrasts.
One last thing before we go. When I was reading back on some of the stuff that I wrote and what was going on in that whole timeline back in 2011, 2012, when the NCAA came out and said there will be no further punishments, and that there would be no failure to monitor or whatever, the national guys who are still national guys today were like, we should just get rid of the NCAA enforcement policy if this is all we're getting. And I recall, Ohio State fired their head coach. And it's like people still wanted more after that. And there was probation. There were, losses of scholarships and all of that good stuff. But so there you go. According to artificial intelligence, there will be some penalties, but maybe not the hammer, but maybe also the hammer. Who's to say? Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope this has answered all of your questions. And if it has, go ahead and hit the thumbs up on the YouTube if you're watching. And of course, you can always find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.